Well, of course, here at home, the big news is that we are in a recession. I can only say congratulations, Joe Biden. You've got an effective distraction for the crumbling economy in international conflict, which I got to say is probably more worrisome. A U.S. aircraft carrier and its strike group are headed into the hotly contested waters around Taiwan ahead of a possible visit by Nancy Pelosi to the island. Xi Jinping has had a conversation with Joe Biden where he apparently said, "Don't play with fire, you will get burned." Yeah. Nuclear war, maybe. At least that's what a UK national security advisor is warning based on everything we're seeing. So while back at home, we are fretting about gas prices with an upcoming election, one thing that's going to assist the Democrats and Joe Biden in getting people's minds off of the panic they face at home is panic abroad. How can you be worrying about your gas prices when there's the threat of nuclear war? Perhaps this is a big nothing burger. Nancy Pelosi is going to be visiting Taiwan. China clearly does not like this. But is the story really that big of a deal? It may be. It may just be coincidence that at a time when Joe Biden's facing some of the worst possible press he could be facing, and the Democrats are surely going to get voted out, a distraction has emerged. But is it a distraction? You know, look, as much as I'd like to say so, I think we have to take this very seriously. The threat of conflict with China has been escalating. Reports of Taiwan preparing for an invasion by China, these reports have been coming out for the past several months, the past couple of years. So while it may be convenient that Joe Biden gets a distraction, this story has been bubbling up, ignored in the background as we deal with domestic issues. But if we don't pay attention to what's to come here, well, then we're going to be left hurting. I often talk about food shortages, economic crises, potential civil war. Now, this story is something that I have discussed quite a bit, but in the past several months or year or so, this story hasn't been as big. Now it's coming back to the forefront. Any potential supply chain disruptions that we're facing will be exacerbated to an extreme degree with a potential conflict coming out of China. And I don't mean just an actual conflict, the potential for a conflict. Right now in China, we're hearing stories about banks barring people from taking out money. China may get desperate. They may start trying to hoard resources. And at a time when there's a major supply chain crunch and the U.S. has foolishly given much of its manufacturing to China, we will reap, well, let's just call it benefits of our folly. We saw this during the COVID pandemic when we were having our masks and personal protective gear produced in China, and China just commandeered the production and said, it's ours now. Our vitamin C and other vitamins and medications being produced in China was a huge mistake. If we do enter a conflict with China, this will make the supply chain crunch you're feeling now look like child's play. I hope you pay attention to the seriousness that's to come. Because right now, as we're experiencing all of these problems domestically, and Joe Biden does need a distraction, I have to add, to be fair, the story about Joe Biden's business ties with potential ties through his family with China and other countries, the fact the man may be corrupt or even compromised, the fact that his brain may not be with it. This is not so much a distraction as it is an exacerbation of the crisis that is the failures of Joe Biden. And his approval rating shows it. He couldn't handle Afghanistan. Do you think he'll be able to handle China? We're in very serious trouble. And so I will say this to reiterate a point from Ned Ryan yesterday on Timcast IRL. Trump needs to talk about the possibilities, not the past. Trump or the Republicans or DeSantis, they need to come out now and say, we need a change in leadership before it's too late. Well, let's read the news about what's happening with this strike group heading into the Taiwanese waters. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to get access to the Timcast IRL Uncensored Show, Monday through Thursday, 11 p.m. with our guests from IRL, talking about things that are a bit spicy. In the past several episodes have been particularly spicy, and I can only just say that because we'll just call it spicy. We'll just call it that. If you want to see uncensored conversations and some real brutal commentary and some insults, some hot debate, check out the Timcast IRL podcast, members only section on Timcast, but also check out our new show, Tales from the Inverted World. These are hour-long stories seeking the lost Confederate gold in Georgia and talking about the history and where the gold may have gone, as well as the encounters Shane Cashman had while he was there. But don't forget to like this video right now, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Here's the story from Yahoo News. A U.S. aircraft carrier and its strike group are headed into the hotly contested waters around Taiwan ahead of a possible visit by Nancy Pelosi. Take a look at that photo. The USS Ronald Reagan and its strike group are now operating in the South China Sea. South Korean Defense Ministry via Getty Images. I just got to say, I love America, and this photo is beautiful. Beautiful. Worrying. Particularly worrying, but beautiful. Yo, I love seeing American displays of power. I don't like foreign conflict. I don't like the conflict in the Middle East. I like what Donald Trump did on foreign policy, but I like the idea that we as a nation have been strong. We show our strength, and this photo to me is beautiful. I don't like what it may represent, and I'm really concerned about a potential conflict, but I do like seeing the bravest on these ships operating in proper capacity. Here's the story. A U.S. aircraft carrier and its strike group are now in the South China Sea. Speaking to Insider on Wednesday night, U.S. Navy spokesperson Mark Langford confirmed that the vessels were on the move and operating in the South China Sea. According to Langford, the carrier is continuing normal scheduled operations as part of her routine patrol in support of a free and open Indo-Pacific. The news comes less than a day after a report emerged about the Pentagon's preparations to protect Speaker Nancy Pelosi with fighter jets and ships if she were to visit Taiwan. Pelosi was scheduled to visit the island in April. However, the trip was postponed after she tested positive for COVID. Per the Financial Times, Pelosi is tentatively set to visit the island in August. Meanwhile, China warned this week of a possible military response. Yikes. If the U.S. insists on taking its own course, the Chinese military will never sit idly by. And it will definitely take strong actions to thwart any external forces' interference, said Senior Colonel Tan Kefei, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Defense. If Pelosi does visit Taiwan, she would be the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit the island since Republican Newt Gingrich made the trip in 1997. The possibility of Pelosi visiting Taiwan comes at a tense time. China has grown more aggressive with Taiwan, flying more military craft near the island and even deploying an armada of sand dredgers to carve sand from the Taiwanese coast in June 2021. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. The U.S. generally regards Taiwan with strategic ambiguity, not recognizing its independence while still providing it with weapons. CIA Chief Bill Burns this month also commented that China is likely learning lessons from Russia's failures in Ukraine and calibrating the how and when of a potential invasion of the island. Meanwhile, Chinese leader Xi Jinping has stated repeatedly that China must reunify with Taiwan, which it considers a breakaway province. You know, personally, I consider Taiwan to be the true government of China, and China was taken over by communists. But I digress. While Pelosi's Taiwan trip has not been confirmed, she is scheduled to visit Japan, Indonesia, and Singapore. For now, Pelosi's Taiwan trip has not been confirmed, but other stops like, are they just repeating themselves there? Okay, we get it. Not confirmed. We got a lot to go through. I mean, for one, the New York Times comes out and says it. Today, Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan is too dangerous. We have The Guardian reporting that a UK national security advisor is saying there is a risk of nuclear war from cutting off China and Russia. Yeah, it's worrying. And I wonder if the optimism bias is seeping in. Optimism and normalcy. It can't happen. It won't happen. Do not fall victim. I'll tell you this. When I talk about the Civil War in this country, the first Civil War, we talk about the Battle of Fort Sumter, where locals did not believe a civil war was possible. So they climbed atop a local hill and they had picnics and they watched, thinking nothing would happen until the cannon fire started. And then they watched in horror at the gruesome brutality and reality that is war. You think it can't happen until it does. From the Financial Times, Xi warns Biden not to play with fire ahead of Taiwan trip by Nancy Pelosi. Xi Jinping warned Joe Biden not to play with fire as the Chinese and U.S. presidents spoke for the first time since Beijing was angered by a planned visit to Taiwan by Nancy Pelosi. I just want to say, look, I don't know if it's the right thing for Nancy Pelosi to do. I want to say I really despise Nancy Pelosi, but I respect this. I absolutely respect this. Standing with Taiwan, I respect. It's a bold move. I think the U.S. should be speaking up in defense of Taiwan to a certain degree. We don't want war with China, but it looks like we are on a dangerous track. And no matter what we do, Taiwan will fall to China. And that means, as Steve Bannon described it, Silicon Valley West, our computer chips, it means we're not going to have them. Now, the U.S. has been frantically trying to up production of silicon chips. That's why we saw a big speech by Joe Biden recently, in the past half year or so, where he said we are going to be funding the production and manufacturing of silicon chips here in the United States. Yeah, you better do it now. You better do it because China is gearing up to take Taiwan. Now, this move by Nancy Pelosi is bold, and I do say it is respectable. You don't have to like the lady to be like, it's a risky move and it is dangerous going there. You can criticize it, and I think it should be criticized because it could be too risky. But I think there's a certain amount of bravery in it. I got no problem saying it as much as I don't like the lady. In a statement posted on the Chinese Foreign Ministry's website after the two leaders talked on Thursday, she did not directly mention Pelosi's possible visit, but said his administration would resolutely safeguard China's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Quote, "Those who play with fire will perish by it." Are you kidding me? Yikes. It is hoped the U.S. will be clear-eyed about this, China's chairman, I should say. China's foreign ministry also quoted Biden as saying Washington's one China policy had not changed and that his administration did not support independence for the self-ruled island, which Beijing claims is part of its territory. It was the leaders' first call since March, when tensions were also running high in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. She met Vladimir Putin shortly before the Russian president sent his army into Ukraine and has tacitly supported Moscow throughout the conflict. The White House said the call lasted for more than 2 hours, but provided no additional details. Beijing sees trips to Taiwan by U.S. lawmakers as a contravention of Washington's one China policy, which recognizes Beijing as the sole government of China. Pelosi would be the most senior U.S. lawmaker to visit Taiwan in 25 years. Quote, "China-U.S. relations are pretty bad in all respects," said Shi Yinhong, an international relations professor at Renmin University in Beijing. He added that the People's Liberation Army was likely to take necessary countermeasures if Pelosi proceeded with her trip, but said China would still seek to avoid full and direct military confrontation with the U.S. The USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier transited the South China Sea earlier this month before docking in Singapore on July 22nd. It then canceled a planned port in Vietnam before sailing back towards the contested sea, where China is embroiled in a series of long-running territorial disputes with its maritime neighbors. Dark days, my friend. Dark days, my friends. A richer, stronger China warns Pelosi not to visit Taiwan. Take a look at this photograph. A Chengkang-class frigate fires an anti-air missile as part of a Navy demonstration in Taiwan's annual Hanquang exercises off the island's eastern coast near the city of Yilan, Taiwan on Tuesday, July 26th. The Taiwanese capital, Taipei, staged a civil defense drill Monday, and President Tsai Ing-wen on Tuesday attended the annual Hanquang military exercises, although there was no direct connection with tensions over a possible visit by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Here's what I want to see. I want to see Taiwan unified with China. I really, really do. I mean, I want to see the Taiwanese government take over the Chinese government and an end to the Chinese Communist Party. Very different from what they're proposing. My proposal is an end to the Chinese Communist Party and a restoration of democracy and Republican values. I don't mean Republican Party. I'm talking about republicanism. The people electing true representatives and an end to the authoritarianism of the CCP. Over at time, we will do what is necessary. Pentagon preparing in case Pelosi travels to Taiwan. The risk is here. The New York Times published a guest essay from Bonnie Glaser and Zach Cooper saying Pelosi's trip to Taiwan is too dangerous. Writing, the U.S. and China are on a collision course in the Taiwan Strait. China's ambitions have risen along with its military power, and it may soon be capable of seizing democratically ruled Taiwan, even in the fight with the U.S. President Xi Jinping is hoping to get an unprecedented third term later this fall and cannot afford to appear weak. He has been increasing pressure on Taiwan and apparently believes the U.S. is abandoning its circumspection about Taiwan's status and may soon formally back the island's independence. War. What is the possibility? China knows the reality of Ukraine. They know the media's lies. Right now with Ukraine, the argument is the U.S. is just helping out. We're sending funds. China is not looking at it that way. China and Russia are looking at what's happening in Ukraine as NATO intervention. We're providing the training. We're providing the weapons. We're even providing our own citizens. That's right. American citizens, private contractors, veterans, and an international cohort of volunteers. Do you think China or Russia looks at that and says, well, it's clearly not the U.S. involvement? Now, for Russia, they're angry. They look at that like the U.S. going to war with them. They've said it. Russian media has outright said they're at war with NATO. China looks at it like a vulnerability. What do you think the Chinese military is seeing right now? The U.S. is stretched too thin. We cannot possibly defend the Eastern Front in Ukraine and the Taiwan Strait. If China wants to take Taiwan, they need to do it soon, which may be why Nancy Pelosi is going there, which may be why the USS Reagan is heading or is now there in the South China Sea, because the U.S. is trying to show strength and saying we won't stand for it. But China knows we will not be able to fight a war on two fronts. Now, we have allies. We have Australia. We have Japan. We've got a positioning in South Korea. That provides us with a decent ability to protect Taiwan, and China might not be able to make it. They might not be able to actually take the island. However, I have to imagine that China is weighing the risks versus the long-term effects of failing to take Taiwan now. When will they ever have another opportunity at a divided United States with multiple wars on two different fronts? Not likely. Unless they're hoping the war in Europe escalates, drawing the U.S. further in, then they can make their move. But if China does nothing and they ignore this, and the U.S. clears the Ukraine conflict and then shores up its strength and defenses, well, then China will never get Taiwan. There's also the internal conflict here in the U.S. The U.S. military is struggling to recruit, and China knows it. So maybe China says, we wait. We wait because we know the U.S. military is struggling. The U.S. Navy, the armed forces are struggling. Maybe they're betting in a year or two, it'll only get easier. I will also add, if Donald Trump announces his run for office, this will put Xi Jinping in a difficult position. Wartime presidents do well, which means Biden will have every incentive to stand strong and try and earn points in that regard. So he may go that direction. But if Donald Trump wins, sorry, Xi, you will never set foot on Taiwan again. Donald Trump is a madman. In both the positive and negative ways, I will say it. He is the madman who crossed into the DMZ in North Korea with no security detail to make a point. Brave. That's the good madman. He's also the guy who calls people horseface and threatens nuclear strikes on major city capitals. He said it. He said he warned Russia and China he'd nuke them. And he said, maybe they didn't take me as serious, completely believe me, but there's that 5% chance. There's that, about 5, they believe me about 5%, but that's enough. Donald Trump said that he told China, if they move in on Taiwan, he will nuke Beijing. He told Russia, if they move in Ukraine, he will nuke Moscow. It's horrifying, but kind of impressive. He's like, they didn't know whether to believe him or not. This lunatic in the White House might actually do it. Here's a funny thing. Vladimir Putin backed off of Ukraine when Trump was president. Now they tried to argue, well, that was because Trump was helping Russia. Oh, please. Russia needs warm water port access. That's why they want the land bridge from the Donbass region into Crimea. When Donald Trump was president, they did nothing. Yeah, because Trump is, again, in all the good ways and bad ways, a madman. If Donald Trump wins, Xi Jinping has no opportunity. But this is where things get scary. With Joe Biden being so out of his mind, how will they ever get another chance like this? Let's talk about Joe Biden's mind. What worries me the most? Here's an article from Town Hall titled, "So it turns out that Biden video was worse than we initially knew." There's a viral video of Joe Biden speaking in, I think it's the White House. There's two videos, and they look very different. In one, his eyes are agape, just as wide as they can be. And he's just like, you get it, and people are like, dude, that guy's hopped up on amphetamines or something. There's another video from the same room where his eyes are squinty, and he's speaking more low and calm. And many people were like, is he a robot? Is this a deep fake? What is it? And I'm like, guys, it's from 2 different days. That's all it is, a pre-record. Take a look at this clip. This clip is the most stunning.
This law does so much more. It saves lives, including yours. It'll help you do your job.
Take a look. After every sentence, the video jump cuts.
But it's just a start. Last week, I rolled out my Safer America plan with the goal of doing 3 key things. First, take additional
jump cut.
Common sense steps to reduce gun crimes and violence.
The reason why this video is alarming is because the man could not speak for 20 seconds without them cutting. The man's falling apart. This video, if we are seeing it, Xi Jinping is seeing it. And this is what scares me right now. I feel like we are in the most dangerous of times for this country. The January 6th committee and Democrats are weaponizing the DOJ. It is insane. They are seeking to rip this country apart. This is the opportunity for Xi to move in. Joe Biden's out of his mind, unable to think or operate functionally. The U.S. is engaged in conflict on Europe's eastern front. And internally, we are too busy fighting ourselves. So maybe there won't be a nuclear war because it doesn't need to be. Why would there need to be if the U.S. is in such disarray? The reality, I suppose, is that China is also in disarray, to be fair. But there are other questions that I think need to be brought up. And that question is Hunter Biden, China. Is Joe Biden entangled in some kind of foreign business dealing through his son with China? And will Biden be forced to buckle? You know what I found? Projection. That the Democrats project onto the Republicans that which they do. I'll give you an example. Well, actually, I'll give you the funny example. Democrats claiming Republicans are projecting is the funny example. Democrats are like Republicans are projecting on the Democrats what they're doing. And it leads us to the obvious question, who's right? A question that we've often asked. If the left and the right are accusing each other of the exact same things, maybe it's just, he said, she said. Wrong. The left is wrong. The right is correct. Tends to be. And I can definitively prove it. So the obvious thing here is all the lies. Jussie Smollett, right? They believe that stuff. Hands up, don't shoot. But this discernible and definitive proof that it is the Democrats projecting is Ukraine Gate. Donald Trump saw a video of Joe Biden saying, I went to the president and said, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting $1 billion. Many Democrats and left-wing activists don't even know this happened. When we had Hunter Avalon on Timcast IRL, and I mentioned this, he smirked and said, that didn't happen. And I said, yes, it did. He said, no, it didn't. And then I played the video of Joe Biden saying it. I'm like, here's a video of him saying it. Is it deep fake? Is it fake? I don't know. Looks real to me. It is true. It was reported. It's a factual statement. He didn't know it. He was like, don't come to me thinking I don't do my research. I read all day, every day, everything. I read too many articles, hundreds of articles every single day. I fact check. Donald Trump saw what Joe Biden did, and he said, look into this. The Democrats accused Trump of a quid pro quo. Remarkable. The reality was Joe Biden threatened to withhold U.S. aid, which he has no legal authority to do, unless they did him a personal favor. But don't worry, it was in line with U.S. foreign policy. Just so happened the guy he wanted fired was investigating the company Burisma, where Joe's son worked. Now, let me stop you there. I'm not saying Joe intentionally went to the prosecutor and said, to the president and said, fire the prosecutor, he's investigating my son. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a conflict of interest. Burisma was under investigation by the prosecutor. Joe Biden may have been operating within the realm of what the U.S. wanted, but still a conflict of interest it was. Now, you can assume that he did it intentionally, or you can assume it was just a conflict of interest he didn't know about. I don't care. The point is, Joe Biden engaged in a quid pro quo. He had no legal authority to withhold the $1 billion, and he threatened it and bragged about it. They claimed it was Trump who did it, and they impeached him. I often look at the news and I try and figure out, are we really being right here? And I think the fair point is, whatever the side we are open to compromise. We are the ones who say, arrest the rioters on January 6th, but the people who had no idea should be released. The left are the ones who say all of them, every single one's an insurrectionist, and anyone who even read a news article is also an insurrectionist. That's the dirty game they play. They are zealous, psychotic authoritarians. They're lying, and they're deranged. And this is what we have to deal with now. That's the reality of the Biden family. Newsweek reports. In recent weeks, scandalous stories following an alleged leak of Hunter Biden's iCloud account has added a new pain for his father's administration, which is already suffering a falling public support and several growing political pressures. Some of the information surrounding the leak has already been debunked as fabrication, but the acknowledgement of the leak by security service shows it being assessed seriously. Well, much of the information is true. They go on to mention Hunter Biden in China. Among Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings that have come under the microscope is his involvement with the Chinese equity firm BHR and its relationship with the powerful Chinese state-owned companies. Hunter Biden had invested about $420,000 into the firm for a 10% equity stake in the company. Okay. Here we go. From the New York Post, as of yesterday night. Hunter Biden's business partner called Joe Biden the big guy in panicked message after Post's laptop story. You may recall there was an email that went viral where they said 10% for the big guy. The circumstantial evidence is beyond probable cause for an investigation into Joe Biden and his son. It would seem that Joe Biden used the power of his position as vice president to grant his son access to do deals, and then Joe Biden benefited from them. It's been reported they shared bank accounts. That's right. That Joe Biden and his son shared bank accounts. I don't even know how you do that. Look, I've got accountants, and I'm talking about, helping my mom out. And he's like, you can't. I'm like, can you share a bank? No sharing bank accounts. I'm like, huh? Because then you're giving a gift. Okay. What about a credit card? No. Anything you give to them, if it exceeds a certain amount, is taxable. You can't just do that. They shared an email account. They shared a phone number. That's right. Joe and Hunter shared a phone number. The question is, do we have something to look forward to in that there won't be a war with the U.S. and China? And that's a good thing. But the bad thing about it is that it's because Joe Biden is compromised by China. That may be the reality. Look, China having these deals with Hunter Biden, because all the companies go through the CCP, they could even fabricate stuff to make Joe look bad. Joe is in trouble with this. They could fabricate emails and just be like, here's the real emails. You think anyone would believe they weren't real? That's the danger here. Or there could be real emails calling Joe Biden a big guy, saying he gets 10%, which shows that our president is compromised, corrupt, and I firmly believe that's true, and I'm disgusted by it. The media, of course, has protected Joe Biden because, well, we're run by swamp monsters, snakes, evil people who enrich themselves off of public office. I don't know how you solve it. Public office is power, and everyone knows it, and they want power, so they'll take it. So how do you solve for it? I don't know. The New York Post says, James Gilliard, a former British Special Forces officer with ties to UK intelligence, discussed the Post's exclusive report with an unnamed person on October 14, 2020, according to the message provided by a whistleblower to GOP congressional investigators probing the laptop. In the message, Gilliard, 58, reassured the person that the revelations about Biden's apparent involvement in his son's foreign deals would not be damaging, regardless of the outcome of the 2020 election. Gilliard was asked if Hunter and or Joe or Joe's campaign would try to make it, we were never involved. I don't see how that would work for them, Gilliard responded. I think in the scenario that he wins, they would just leave sleeping dogs lie. If they lose, honestly, I don't think that the big guy really cares about that because he'll be too busy focusing on all the other ish he is doing. The identity of the big guy has since formed part of the grand jury investigation in Wilmington, Delaware, into Hunter's business dealings, as calls ramped up to have President Biden, who has repeatedly denied any involvement in his son's dealing, included in a conspiracy probe. Gilliard has referenced the big guy as he acted in the driving force behind Hunter and his uncle Jim Biden's planned multi-million-dollar deal with China's energy conglomerate CEFC. So maybe it's finally all coming down. I doubt it. I really don't believe so. You know, people on the left keep saying, this is it. Donald Trump's being investigated. He's going to go to prison. And they make these memes and these comics. And I'm just like, it's not gonna happen. Calm down, fellers. You ain't going to get what you think you're going to get. Come on. I mean, maybe it's normalcy bias that I don't believe it will happen, but I just don't see them going after Trump. And I don't think they have anything on him. They tried with Russiagate. Nothing happened. Now I'm just like, it's all lies. But what about Joe Biden? Tony Bobulinski has come out and said Joe Biden's the big guy. Someone else called him the big guy, and now they said 10% for the big guy. Come on, man. It is just so apparent. So at least I can say this. You know what? There's probably not going to be a war because Joe Biden's compromised. How about that? Maybe that's the argument from the left. Well, there wouldn't be a conflict with Russia and Trump because Trump was compromised. Why wasn't Russia moving into Ukraine if that was the case? If Trump was compromised by Russia, why didn't Russia take the opportunity? Now, same question goes for China. If Joe Biden's compromised, why wouldn't they take the opportunity? Perhaps they will. Taiwan has been preparing for an invasion by China. China has been doing with sand dredgers coming through and ripping apart their coast. More than what we saw with Russia and Ukraine. So it may actually be coming. I hope not. But all I can do is tell you what we're seeing. The probabilities are beyond me. I don't know. I never do. It's possible that we do see an escalation because people just don't know when and how it begins. A soldier can get shot or, you know, I'm reminded of that Lord of the Rings scene where the archers are up atop, it's Helm's Deep, and they have to get everybody, even the old guys are holding, you know, bow and arrow. And then the whole old guy can't hold it any longer, and he releases the arrow and it hits one of the orcs or whatever. And they're like, hold. Maybe that's it. Maybe what we'll see is just one scared person on a boat and they fire. And then the conflict starts, whether anyone wanted it to. We shall see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.